The twin moons of Zereth hung like broken pearls in the crimson sky. As smoke billowed from the capital's crystalline spires, Princess Zera pressed herself against the cold stone wall of the underground passage, her small hands trembling as explosions echoed through the tunnels above. At barely 12 years old, she had never imagined that her world could crumble so completely in a single night. "Stay here, my star," her mother, Empress Velina, had whispered just moments before, her usually pristine robes torn and stained with dust. "Whatever happens, do not leave this passage until the bells of peace ring 3 times. The Empress had kissed her daughter's forehead, leaving behind the faint scent of moonflower perfume that Zera would carry in her memory forever. Now, alone in the darkness, Zera could hear the distant sounds of battle, the sharp crack of energy weapons, the thunderous collapse of buildings, and worst of all, the screams of her people. The human fleet had broken through the planetary defenses with a ferocity that had caught everyone by surprise. The passage shuddered as another explosion rocked the palace above. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and somewhere in the distance, she heard the sound of running feet. Zera's breath caught in her throat. Were they human soldiers? Had they found the hidden tunnels that her ancestors had carved centuries ago? She clutched the small pendant around her neck, a gift from her father, before he had departed for the front lines 3 months ago. The crystal pulsed with a soft blue light, responding to her fear. Right now it felt more like a beacon that might give away her hiding place. The footsteps grew closer, and Zera could see the flicker of artificial light dancing on the tunnel walls. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, trying to become invisible. Her heart hammered so loudly, she was certain it would echo through the passage and betray her location. "Sector 7 clear," a voice called out in the harsh, clipped accent of the human military. "No life signs detected. Keep moving," another voice responded. "We need this whole section swept before dawn." The lights moved past her alcove, and Zera held her breath until her lungs burned. She waited until the footsteps faded completely before daring to breathe again. But her relief was short-lived. Behind her, from the direction she had come, she heard a new sound, the whine of energy weapons charging up. "Found something down here," a different voice called out. This one was younger, less certain than the others. "Looks like there might be a survivor." Zera's blood turned to ice. They had found someone else, perhaps other members of the royal family, who had also sought refuge in the tunnels. She knew she should run, should follow her mother's instructions and stay hidden. But something made her creep forward instead. Through a crack in the stone wall, she could see into the main passage. 3 human soldiers stood in a semicircle around a huddled figure, even in the dim light of their portable illuminators. Zera could see it was her young cousin, Prince Kale. He was only 8 years old, and tears streaked down his dirt-stained face as he stared up at the humans towering over him. "What's the protocol for juveniles?" one of the soldiers asked, his weapon trained on the child. "Same as adults," the squad leader replied coldly. "No witnesses, no survivors." Zera watched in horror as the soldiers raised their weapons. Her cousin closed his eyes and whispered what sounded like a prayer to the ancient star gods. She wanted to scream, to rush out and protect him, but her body seemed frozen with terror. But then, from another tunnel entrance, came a new figure. This human soldier was different from the others, taller, with broader shoulders and wearing armor that seemed less pristine, more battle-worn. His helmet bore scratches and scorch marks that spoke of hard fighting. "What's the situation here?" he asked, his voice carrying an authority that made the other soldiers straighten. "Found a juvenile, sir," the squad leader reported. "About to implement the cleansing protocol." The newcomer stepped closer to examine Prince Kale. For a moment, his helmet's faceplate reflected the light, hiding his features. Then he reached up and removed it entirely, revealing a face that was younger than his voice suggested. His dark hair was damp with sweat, and a thin scar ran across his left cheek. But his eyes were a startling shade of green that seemed to glow in the artificial light. "He's just a child," the soldier said quietly. "Protocol is protocol, Captain," the squad leader insisted. "High Command wants—" "I know what they want," the captain interrupted, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "But I also know what's right. He holstered his sidearm and knelt down beside Prince Kale, speaking in a gentle tone that was completely at odds with his military bearing. "Hey there, little one. What's your name?" Kale looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes but said nothing. "It's okay," the captain continued. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise." He reached into one of his pockets and pulled out a small ration bar, offering it to the child. "Are you hungry?" From her hiding place, Zara watched this unexpected scene unfold. She had been taught that humans were monsters, that they showed no mercy and felt no compassion. Yet here was a human soldier, clearly in a position of authority, showing kindness to her cousin. "Sir," one of the other soldiers said nervously, "if command finds out we didn't follow protocol." "I am your commanding officer here," the captain replied firmly. "This child is no threat to anyone." He turned back to Prince Kale and spoke in a voice so gentle that Zara had to strain to hear it. "Do you know of any safe places, little prince? Somewhere you can hide until this is over?" As the scene unfolded before her, Princess Zara realized she was witnessing something that would change her understanding of the universe forever. This human soldier, this enemy, was risking everything to save her cousin, and in that moment, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. 15 years had passed since that night in the tunnels, and Empress Zara stood before the massive star map in her private study, her fingers tracing the glowing points of light that represented the outer rim colonies. The crystalline walls of her palace reflected the holographic display, creating an illusion of standing among the stars themselves. "Your Majesty," came a soft voice from behind her. Zara turned to see Kes, her most trusted advisor, approaching with a data pad in his slender hands. The elderly Zirithi's silver skin were the intricate tattoos that marked him as a keeper of secrets, one of the few beings in the Empire authorized to handle the most sensitive intelligence. "What have you found?" Zara asked, though she could already read the answer in his violet eyes. "3 more leads have gone cold," Kes replied, his voice heavy with disappointment. "The mining operation on Vega 7 confirmed. They have no records of anyone matching the description. The agricultural collective on New Haven claims their personnel files were destroyed in a solar flare 2 years ago." He paused, his expression troubled. "I fear we may be chasing shadows, Your Majesty." Zara turned back to the star map, her jaw set with determination. For 3 years, she had been conducting this search in secret, using every resource at her disposal to find the human soldier who had saved her life. Official channels had yielded nothing. Captain Jackson Rivers had seemingly vanished from all military records, as if he had never existed at all. "And the 3rd lead?" she asked. Kes hesitated. A mining foreman on Kepler Station thought he recognized the description. "A human worker named Marcus, who keeps to himself, never speaks of his past." But when our agent arrived to investigate, the man had already left. Departed 3 days earlier with no forwarding destination. 3 days, Zara repeated, softly, always just ahead of us. "Your Majesty, perhaps it's time to consider that this man may not wish to be found. If he is deliberately staying ahead of our search." Zara shook her head. "No, there's something else at work here. Someone with access to our communications. Someone who knows we're looking." She manipulated the star map, zooming in on the outer rim territories. "Show me the pattern again." Kes activated his data pad, and new markers appeared on the holographic display, red dots showing the locations where their search had led them. 12 different worlds over the past 18 months, each time evidence of a human male, matching the description, each time departing just before our agents arrive. "But look at the progression," Zara said, her finger tracing the path through space. "He's not running randomly. There's a pattern here, a deliberate course." She paused at the outermost marker. "What's beyond Kepler Station? The frontier zone." "Your Majesty, uncharted space, mining asteroids, salvage operations. It's not the sort of place where civilized beings choose to live. Perfect place to disappear, though." Zara stepped back from the display, her mind racing. "Kes, I want you to prepare my personal ship, the small one, designed for deep space reconnaissance." "Your Majesty." Kes looked alarmed. "Surely you're not considering—" "I am." Zara's voice carried the authority that had made her one of the most respected leaders in the Galaxy. Official channels have failed us. Our agents have been detected. There's only one way to find him now. The Council will never approve of you traveling to the frontier zone. It's too dangerous, too unpredictable, and if something were to happen to you, the Council doesn't need to know. Zara turned to face her advisor fully. As far as they're concerned, I'm taking a private retreat to the meditation temples on Sanctuary Moon. A week of solitude and reflection. Kess's violet eyes widened. You're asking me to lie to the Imperial Council. I'm asking you to trust me, as you did when I was a frightened child, and you helped me learn to rule with wisdom instead of fear. The old advisor was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with his conscience. Finally, he sighed. What will you need? Civilian clothes, a ship that won't be recognized as Imperial, and a cover identity that will hold up under casual scrutiny. Zara paused, then added softly, and your promise that if I don't return within 10 days, you'll tell the Council the truth. Your Majesty, promise me. Kess, I promise. 3 days later, a small, unremarkable cargo hauler dropped out of hyperspace, near the mining station designated as Omega-7. To any casual observer, it appeared to be just another independent trader looking for work in the asteroid fields. The ship's registry listed its captain as Vera Starling, a freelance pilot with a clean record and modest credentials. In reality, Empress Zara sat in the pilot's seat, her distinctive silver hair hidden beneath a brown wig, her royal bearing disguised by practical work clothes and carefully applied makeup that made her appear older and more weathered. She had spent years learning to pilot small craft in secret, preparing for a day when she might need to travel without the full pageantry of Imperial escort. Omega-7 was exactly what she had expected, a ramshackle collection of docking bays and habitation modules cobbled together around a massive asteroid. The place reeked of desperation and hard luck, the sort of frontier outpost where people came when they had nowhere else to go. As she guided her ship into a docking bay, Zara's heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and terror. After 15 years of searching, she might finally be close to finding the man who had saved her life, but she was also venturing into dangerous territory, far from the protection of her guards and the safety of her palace. The docking bay's artificial gravity was lighter than she was used to, making each step feel slightly bouncing. The air recyclers struggled against the smell of industrial lubricants and unwashed bodies. As she made her way toward the station's main hub, Zara tried to project the casual confidence of a veteran trader, while her eyes searched every face for familiar green. Eyes. You new here? A gruff voice asked behind her. Zara turned to see a burly human male with cybernetic implants replacing his left arm. His clothes marked him as a supervisor of some kind, probably someone with authority on the station. Just arrived, she replied, keeping her voice neutral. Looking for work. What kind of work? Whatever pays. I'm good with engines, computers, general maintenance. The man looked her up and down appraisingly. We got openings in the deep salvage crew. Dangerous work, but it pays well. You interested? Maybe. Who's the crew chief? Guy named Marcus. Keeps to himself mostly, but he knows his business. Been here about 6 months now. The supervisor paused, then added, fair warning though, he don't like questions about his past. You want the job, you keep your curiosity to yourself. Zara's pulse quickened. Marcus, got it. Where can I find him? Bay 12. But he's probably out on a run right now. Deep salvage crews work long shifts. The man checked a grimy chronometer on his wrist. Should be back sometime after the next shift change. I'll wait. As Zara made her way to Bay 12, her mind raced with possibilities. After years of chasing shadows, was she finally about to come face to face with the man who had haunted her memories? The boy who had saved her cousin, who had shown mercy in the midst of war, who had disappeared without a trace. Bay 12 was quieter than the main hub, with only a few workers moving cargo containers and performing routine maintenance. Zara found a place to sit where she could watch the bay's entrance and settled in to wait. Hours passed. The shift change came and went. Just as Zara was beginning to wonder if she had made a mistake, the bay's main doors opened with a mechanical, grinding sound. A salvage crew entered, their faces tired and their clothes stained with the grime of hard work. And there, walking at the back of the group, was a man who made Zara's breath catch in her throat. He was older now, his dark hair streaked with gray, his face marked by years of hard living. But those eyes, those unmistakable green eyes, were exactly as she remembered them. After 15 years of searching, Empress Zara had finally found Captain Jackson Rivers. For a moment that stretched like eternity, Zara simply stared. The man she had searched for across half the galaxy was standing less than 20 meters away, discussing equipment schedules with his crew. He looked tired, weathered by years of hard labor, but unmistakably him. The scar across his left cheek had faded, but was still visible, and those green eyes that had shown her kindness in the darkness remained unchanged. Jackson Marcus. She reminded herself, dismissed his crew with quiet efficiency. As the other workers dispersed, he began checking over a piece of salvage equipment, his movements careful and methodical. Zara rose from her seat, her heart hammering against her ribs, and walked toward him. "Excuse me," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "I heard you might have work available." He looked up, and for just an instant, something flickered across his features. Recognition, perhaps, or simply the wariness of a man who had learned to be suspicious of strangers. "Depends on your experience," he replied, his voice rougher than she remembered. "Worn down by years and hardship, I'm good with my hands, quick learner, not afraid of dangerous work." Zara paused, then took a calculated risk. "Name's Vera. Vera Starling. Marcus Webb," he replied automatically, then seemed to catch himself. His green eyes studied her face more carefully, and she saw the exact moment when realization dawned. The tool he was holding slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering to the deck. "It can't be," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the ambient noise of the station. "Hello, Jackson," Zara said softly. He looked around quickly, checking to see if anyone was watching, then grabbed her arm. "Not here. Follow me." He led her through a maze of storage containers to a small office tucked away in the corner of the bay. Once inside, he activated a privacy screen and turned to face her fully. "Princess Zara," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Though I suppose it's Empress now, isn't it? How did you? News travels. Even out here. The coronation 5 years ago was broadcast across the galaxy." His expression hardened. "What are you doing here? And please don't tell me this is some kind of coincidence. I've been looking for you. For 3 years, I've been searching." "Why?" The question came out harsher than perhaps he intended. "You should have forgotten about me, moved on with your life, built something better than the war that brought us together." "I tried," Zara admitted, "but some debts can never be repaid, only acknowledged. You saved my life, Jackson. You saved my cousin's life. I needed to thank you properly. You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone decent would have done." "No," Zara shook her head firmly. "You did what Captain Jackson Rivers would have done. But according to every military database in known space, Captain Jackson Rivers never existed." Jackson's face went very still. "You've been investigating me. I've been trying to find you. There's a difference." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "What happened to you after that night? Why were you erased from the records?" For a long moment, Jackson said nothing. Then he moved to a storage locker in the corner of the office and pulled out a battered metal case. From inside, he withdrew a small data chip. "You want to know what happened?" he said, holding up the chip. "You really want to know why I disappeared?" "Yes." "Then you might not like what you find." He inserted the chip into a portable reader, and a holographic display sprang to life between them. "This is a copy of my final mission report, the one that got me branded a traitor and marked for elimination." Zara read the scrolling text, her expression growing more troubled with each line. The report detailed the palace infiltration, the systematic extermination orders, and Jackson's repeated refusal to follow them. But it was the final section that made her blood run cold. "Intelligence suggests Princess Zara survived the assault," she read aloud. "Request immediate confirmation of target elimination before withdrawing from sector." She looked up at Jackson, her face pale. "They knew I was alive. They were specifically hunting for me." "Keep reading." The next section detailed Jackson's response to the orders. his categorical refusal to hunt down surviving children, his formal protest through military channels, and finally his decision to go absent without leave rather than participate in what he called war crimes against non-combatants. 3 days after I helped you escape, Jackson said quietly, a kill team was sent after me. Not for desertion, for treason, apparently. My commanding officer had received very specific orders about you and your cousin. Orders that came from someone with high-level clearance. What kind of orders? The kind that don't officially exist. The kind that get people disappeared when they refuse to follow them. Jackson deactivated the display and put the chip away. I've been running ever since, changing names, changing faces, staying one step ahead of whoever wants me dead. Zara sank into a chair, her mind reeling. But why? I was just a child. What possible threat could I have posed? That's the question I've been asking myself for 15 years. Jackson sat down across from her. But I think I might have an answer now. What do you mean? Think about it. You said you've been searching for me for 3 years. How many people knew about that search? Only a few. My most trusted advisors. Some intelligence operatives. Zara's voice trailed off as the implications hit her. And somehow, every time your people got close to finding me, I managed to stay one step ahead. Almost like someone was warning me. That's impossible. The people I trusted with this search are completely loyal. Are they? Jackson leaned forward. Or is one of them part of whatever conspiracy wanted you dead as a child? The privacy screen around the office suddenly deactivated, and both of them spun toward the door. Standing in the entrance was a figure Zara recognized with a shocked Naya, her personal handmaiden, the woman who had helped coordinate much of the search effort. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, Naya said, her voice filled with what sounded like genuine regret. But this conversation has gone far enough, Naya. Zara stood slowly, confusion and betrayal warring in her voice. How did I find you? The same way I've been finding him for the past 3 years. Naya stepped into the office, and Zara could see that she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 2 armed figures in the dark uniforms of Imperial intelligence. Did you really think you could conduct a search of this magnitude without the Council knowing about it? The Council? Zara's voice was barely a whisper. Not the full Council, Naya admitted. Just certain members who understand the necessity of maintaining stability. Members who remember why certain decisions were made during the war. Jackson was already moving, his hand reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. How many? He asked grimly. How many what? How many people have you killed to keep this secret? Naya's expression remained calm, almost sympathetic. As few as possible. We take no pleasure in this, Captain Rivers, but some knowledge is too dangerous to be allowed to spread. What knowledge? Zara demanded, her royal authority reasserting itself despite the circumstances. What are you so afraid of? The truth about your bloodline, Your Majesty. The truth about why certain factions wanted you eliminated as a child. Naya paused, then added softly, and the truth about who gave the orders. The office fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Zara stared at her handmaiden, a woman she had trusted completely, who had been part of her inner circle for over a decade. Tell me, Zara said finally. I'm afraid I can't do that, Your Majesty. But Elder Thane is waiting to speak with you. He has a ship in orbit, and he's very eager to explain everything in person. At the mention of Elder Thane's name, Jackson tensed. The War Minister, former War Minister, Naya corrected, now head of the Council's Security Committee, and the man who will decide what happens to both of you. Zara looked at Jackson, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his green eyes. They had found each other at last, only to discover that the secrets they carried were darker and more dangerous than either had imagined. And if we refuse to go with you? Zara asked. Naya's expression didn't change, but the 2 intelligence operatives behind her shifted slightly, their hands moving closer to their weapons. Then Elder Thane will be very disappointed, she said quietly. And disappointment has a way of leading to tragic accidents on stations like this. The transport ship that carried them away from Omega-7 was sleek and silent, its Imperial markings hidden beneath sensor-dampening hull plating. Zara and Jackson sat in the passenger compartment under heavy guard, their hands bound with energy, restraints that hummed softly with contained power. Neither had spoken since leaving the station, both lost in their own thoughts about the web of conspiracy they had stumbled into. Elder Thane's flagship waited for them in the shadow of a dead moon, its massive bulk bristling with weapons and sensor rays. As their transport docked, Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the recycled air. She had known Thane since childhood. He had been her father's closest advisor, a man she had trusted implicitly. The thought that he might have been involved in the attempts on her life made her stomach turn. They were escorted through corridors lined with elite guards to a conference room that Zara recognized as a judicial chamber. The curved walls bore the ancient symbols of Zerati law, and at the center of the room stood the traditional circle of truth, a raised platform where those seeking justice presented their cases. Elder Thane was waiting for them, his aged features composed and unreadable. Despite being well past his 100th year, he still carried himself with the bearing of a military commander. His silver robes marked him as a high judge, authorized to render final verdicts in matters of imperial security. "Your Majesty," he said, inclining his head in a gesture that was respectful but fell short of the full bow protocol. Demanded, "I regret that circumstances require this meeting, do you?" Zara's voice was ice, "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been orchestrating these circumstances for quite some time. Please, sit." Thane gestured to chairs arranged around the circle of truth. "There's much you need to understand before you pass judgment." "I'll stand," Zara replied coldly. Beside her, Jackson remained silent, his green eyes fixed on Thane with undisguised suspicion. "Very well." Thane activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. "What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. Knowledge of it is restricted to only 3 members of the current council." The display showed a star chart of Zerati space, but with additional markings that Zara didn't recognize. Red zones pulsed ominously along the borders, and strange symbols indicated what appeared to be military installations. "During the war," Thane began, "your father made certain decisions that were necessary for our survival, but could never be made public. Alliances were formed with groups that the general population would consider unsavory." "What kind of alliances?" Zara demanded. "Mercenary fleets, criminal syndicates, even certain human factions that were willing to work against their own kind." Thane's expression grew pained. "Your father was desperate, Your Majesty. The human assault had pushed us to the brink of extinction." "Get to the point." Jackson spoke for the first time since boarding the ship. "What does this have to do with trying to murder a child?" Thane's gaze shifted to him. "Because that child carried genetic markers that certain of our allies found problematic." The holographic display changed, showing what appeared to be medical scans and genetic analysis. Zara stared at the data, her heart sinking as she began to understand. "The ancient bloodlines of Zereth carry more than just royal authority," Thane explained. "They carry genetic memories, inherited knowledge passed down through generations. Your particular lineage, Princess, contains information that could destabilize the entire balance of power in this sector." "What information?" Zara whispered. "The location of the Founder's Archive, the original database containing the terraforming protocols that created our worlds. The star maps showing the locations of resource-rich systems. The genetic templates for our entire species." Thane paused, letting the implications sink in. "Information that, in the wrong hands, could be used to either elevate our enemies or destroy us entirely." Jackson stepped forward. "So you decided to kill her to keep the secret safe?" "The decision was not mine alone," Thane replied. "Our allies made it clear that they would withdraw their support if the bloodline knowledge remained intact. Without their help, we would have lost the war entirely." Zara's voice was barely audible. "Who made this demand?" "The Consortium, a coalition of human separatist groups that control most of the Outer Rim. They feared that if you survived to maturity, you might access the genetic memories and use the Founder's knowledge against them." The room fell silent as Zara processed this revelation. Everything she had believed about her childhood, about the war, about the attempts on her life, had been built on lies and political maneuvering. "But I survived," she said finally, "and so did my cousin. Your plan failed." "Not entirely." Thane's expression grew even more grave. "Prince Kale was killed 3 years ago. made to look like an accident, but our intelligence suggests consortium. Agents were responsible. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. Cale, the little boy Jackson had saved, who had grown into a promising young diplomat, was dead because of the same conspiracy that had targeted her. They're still hunting the bloodline, Thane continued, which is why your search for Captain Rivers was so dangerous. Every time you got close to finding him, we had to warn him to move. We couldn't risk the consortium learning that he had saved You've been protecting him. Zara looked between Thane and Jackson in confusion. In a way, Captain Rivers possesses the only independent record of what really happened that night. His testimony could expose the entire conspiracy, but it could also sign his death warrant. Thane deactivated the holographic display. And now, by bringing you two together, we may have triggered the very crisis we've been trying to prevent. What crisis? Jackson demanded. Word of your reunion has already reached certain ears. The consortium knows you're alive, Captain, and they know the Empress has found you. They're mobilizing their fleets as we speak. Zara sank into one of the chairs, her legs suddenly unable to support her. How many will die because of this? That depends, Thane said quietly, on what you choose to do next. Our choices. Jackson's voice was bitter. Seems like our choices are pretty limited, actually. You have more options than you might think. Thane moved to stand before them. Both, you could return to your respective lives, pretend this meeting never happened, and hope the consortium eventually loses interest. You could try to fight them, though the odds would be heavily against you, or what? You could give them what they want. Zara looked up sharply, which is access to the genetic memories. If you were to undergo the ritual to unlock your inherited knowledge and share the Founder's archive with the consortium, they would have no further reason to hunt either of you. Absolutely not, Jackson said immediately. You're talking about giving military secrets to our enemies. I'm talking about preventing a war that could consume half the galaxy, Thane replied. The genetic memories aren't just military secrets, Captain. They're the keys to understanding our entire civilization. Perhaps it's time that knowledge was shared rather than hoarded. Zara stood slowly, her mind racing. And if I refuse, then the consortium will come for you both. They'll tear apart every world in their path to get to you, and millions will die in the crossfire. Thane's ancient eyes met hers. The choice is yours, Your Majesty. But choose quickly. Our sensors are already detecting consortium ships massing at the border. In the silence that followed, Zara looked at Jackson, the man who had saved her life 15 years ago, who had spent those years running and hiding to protect secrets he barely understood. Now, because of her need to find him, they were both trapped in a web of conspiracy that threatened to engulf the entire galaxy. How long do we have? She asked finally. 6 hours, Thane replied. Then we'll be forced to take action with or without your cooperation. Zara nodded slowly, her decision already forming. She had been raised to put her people's welfare above her own desires, but she had also learned that sometimes the right choice wasn't the safe choice. I need to speak with Captain Rivers privately, she said. Of course, but remember 6 hours. Your Majesty, the fate of billions hangs in the balance. As the guards escorted them to a private chamber, Zara felt the weight of destiny settling around her shoulders. In 6 hours, she would have to choose between the safety of surrender and the uncertainty of resistance. But first, she needed to know if the man she had searched for across the galaxy was willing to stand beside her, whatever came next. The private chamber was small and austere, with only basic furnishings and a single viewport showing the star-filled void beyond. Zara and Jackson sat across from each other, their energy restraints finally removed, but the weight of their impossible situation hanging heavy between them. 6 hours, Jackson said quietly, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Not much time to decide the fate of the galaxy. I've already decided, Zara replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil. In her heart, I won't give them the genetic memories. Too many people have died to keep that knowledge safe. Even if it means more will die, especially then. She leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. The moment we give in to their demands, we become complicit in every future death they cause with that information the Founder's archive contains. The genetic templates for our entire species, Jackson, in the wrong hands. It could be used to create biological weapons that could wipe us out entirely. Jackson nodded slowly. So we fight. We fight. Zara paused, then added softly, "But I need you to know something first. Before this all began, before I started searching for you, I told myself it was about gratitude, about repaying a debt, and now I realize I was lying to myself." She looked down at her hands, her voice growing quiet. "I searched for you because somewhere in the back of my mind, I never stopped being that frightened child who found safety in the kindness of a stranger. I searched for you because," she took a breath, "because I think I've been falling in love with a memory for 15 years. The admission hung in the air between them like a challenge. Jackson was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her heart race. "When I pulled you out of those tunnels," he said finally, "I knew I was saving someone important. But I had no idea I was saving the woman who would change everything I believed about honor, about duty, about what's worth fighting for." "Jackson, let me finish." He reached across the small space between them and took her hands in his. "I've spent 15 years running, telling myself I was protecting people by staying hidden. But the truth is, I was just afraid of facing the consequences of my choices, afraid of hoping for something better than survival. And now I'm more afraid of losing you again than I am of dying." His grip on her hands tightened. "Whatever we face out there, we face it together." Zara felt tears stinging her eyes. "Even if it means going against everything your people have been taught about my people." Jackson's voice held a note of bitter irony. "The humans who erased me from existence, who branded me a traitor for refusing to murder children. They stopped being my people the day they chose politics over conscience. And what about my people? The council that lied to me, that's been part of this conspiracy from the beginning. Then maybe it's time for both our species to learn that loyalty isn't about blindly following orders. Maybe it's about choosing to stand with those who share your values, regardless of what world they were born on." Before Zara could respond, the chamber door slid open with a soft hiss. Elder Thane entered, his expression grim. "Time's up," he announced. "Consortium ships have crossed into Imperial space. They're demanding we turn over both of you within the hour, or they'll begin targeting civilian populations. Let them come," Zara said, standing and squaring her shoulders. "I won't be blackmailed into betraying my people's most sacred secrets, Your Majesty. Please reconsider. The death toll will be on their heads, not mine." Zara's voice carried the authority of 15 generations of rulers. "I am Empress of the Zerati, and I will not bow to terrorists." Thane's ancient features softened slightly. "Your father would be proud of your courage, but courage without wisdom often leads to tragedy." "Then help us be wise," Jackson interjected. "You've been playing this game for decades. There has to be another option." "Perhaps there is." Thane activated a small communicator on his wrist. "Naya, please join us in the private chamber." Moments later, Zara's former handmaiden entered, her expression unreadable. "Your Majesty, don't," Zara said coldly, "don't pretend we're still friends after what you've done." "I never pretended anything," Naya replied quietly. "Everything I did was to protect you, even when you couldn't see it. By betraying my trust, by keeping you alive long enough to make your own choices." Naya looked between Zara and Jackson. "The genetic memories aren't just stored in your bloodline, Your Majesty. They're also encoded in the Imperial crown jewels, specifically in the heart of Zerith crystal." Zara's hand instinctively went to her throat, where she usually wore the pendant containing a fragment of that same crystal. "What are you suggesting?" "The crystal can be programmed to release partial information enough to satisfy the consortium's immediate demands, without giving them access to the truly dangerous knowledge." Thane stepped forward. "We could offer them star charts and basic terraforming data while keeping the genetic templates and weapons information sealed." "A compromise," Jackson said thoughtfully. "Give them something valuable but not devastating. It could work." Nye added, "But it would require both of you to present a united front. The consortium needs to believe that this represents your full cooperation." Zara looked at Jackson, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his eyes. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it might buy them time to find a better one. What would that mean for us? She asked. After this is over, that depends, Thane replied carefully. On what you want it to mean. Zara turned to face Jackson fully, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. I've spent my entire adult life ruling alone, making decisions that affected billions without anyone to share the burden. I don't want to do that anymore. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you'd be willing to stand beside me, not just for this crisis, but for whatever comes after, as my partner, my equal, she took a breath, my husband. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Then Jackson smiled the same gentle smile she remembered from that night in the tunnels, but warmer now, full of love and promise. Princess Zara of Zereth, he said formally, then dropped to one knee in the traditional human gesture of proposal. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Yes, absolutely yes. As they embraced, Elder Thane cleared his throat diplomatically. This complicates matters considerably from a diplomatic standpoint, but he smiled for the first time since they'd met. It also sends a powerful message about unity between our species. The consortium won't like it, Naya warned. Then they'll have to learn to live with it, Zara replied, her voice strong with newfound resolve. We're not just offering them information anymore. We're offering them a future where humans and Zerati can work together, instead of destroying each other. 3 hours later, Empress Zara and Captain Jackson Rivers stood before the consortium fleet, broadcasting their message across the galaxy. The genetic memories would be partially shared, but only as part of a broader peace treaty that recognized the rights of both species to coexist and prosper. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a beginning. And as they faced the future together, two souls from different worlds, who had found their destiny in each other, they knew that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology, or weapons, or ancient secrets. Sometimes it was simply the courage to choose love over fear, hope over despair, and unity over division. The stars bore witness to their union, and across the galaxy, a new chapter in the story of two species began to unfold.